From Ticker News with Aaron Young, this is Ticker Today.
Hello and welcome. Great to be with you today. President Trump touts a major EU trade deal. Trump unveils a sweeping trade agreement with the European Union, imposing 15% tariffs on imports as Europe now commits $1.3 trillion to US energy and the markets. Gaza pauses under pressure. Israel halts military action daily in parts of Gaza to allow humanitarian aid amid growing international concern over starvation and worsening conditions. The markets brace for a tariff test. With global tariff deadlines now looming, all eyes turn to Fed policy and corporate earnings as Wall Street rides record highs into an uncertain August. All right, but first today, President Trump has announced a new trade agreement with the European Union, successfully avoiding a potential trade war with the bloc, which is America's largest trading partner. The deal establishes a 15% baseline tariff on European imports, including cars, while the EU now commits to purchasing $750 billion in energy products from the US and investing $600 billion in American markets. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen highlights that the arrangement creates stability amidst the uncertainty. Now, the agreement is considered one of Trump's most significant achievements to date in reshaping global trade policies, and he's happy to talk about it.
The tariff straight across for automobiles and everything else will be a straight across tariff of 15%. So we have a tariff of 15%. We have the opening up of all of the European countries, which I think I could say were essentially closed. I mean, you weren't exactly taking our autos, you weren't exactly taking our agriculture, and then you would have smaller things, but for the most part it was closed. And now it's open. It's open for our companies to go in and do a good job with it. I think you'll like them. I think you'll like it.
The Israeli military has announced a daily pause in operations across parts of Gaza to address a worsening humanitarian crisis following international pressure. Operations will halt in Al-Masawi as well as Gaza City from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. until further notice. Secure routes for aid convoys delivering food and medicine will operate daily from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Aid has begun arriving from Egypt alongside Israeli airdrops to alleviate conditions in the region. The United Nations has now raised concerns about the scale of humanitarian assistance which is needed, as reports indicate a significant number of Gazans have died from malnutrition during this conflict. Well, this week's forecast has grown more uncertain as discussions between the US and China are now in focus. The talks may present additional challenges for Europe as the deadline set by President Trump approaches. Attention on trade negotiations is intensifying. Now, on Friday, Trump told reporters there was only a 50-50 chance of a deal. Analysts suggest the outcomes of the discussions could now significantly impact the global markets. In a bid to shift the focus from the ongoing Jeffrey Epstein saga, President Trump has called for prosecutions of Kamala Harris, Beyoncé and Reverend Al Sharpton. The move comes as questions now continue to swirl around Trump's influence and also his viability long term. Trump claims Beyoncé was paid $11 million to endorse Harris and that she never sang not one note and left the stage to a booing and angry audience. He also claimed that Democrats paid $3 million in expenses to Oprah, $600,000 to civil rights activist and TV personality Reverend Al Sharpton. There is no evidence that any of the people named in Trump's rant were paid for their endorsement by the Democratic campaign. In Australia, the Albanese government is set to introduce legislation to reduce the price of PBS medicines to $25 as Parliament reconvenes this week. The decision aims to address cost of living challenges and follows this week's HETS loan cuts. Now, as the government prepares for an economic roundtable over the coming weeks, it is facing scrutiny regarding new policies. The Business Council of Australia is now advocating for increased tax credits for domestic research and development, stressing the need for a more productive economy. Meanwhile, the coalition in Australia now appears likely to oppose any of the tax increases amid ongoing internal disagreements about climate targets. Now to our ticker tech report, and China has intensified the global tech race by releasing an action plan for artificial intelligence during the World AI Conference, which has been held in Shanghai. Premier Li Qiang has now announced the plan, which encourages international collaboration in tech development and regulation. The announcement follows President Trump's recent AI strategy, which focuses on addressing bias in AI models and supporting American tech abroad. Analysts now suggest that China aims for a multilateral approach, while the US seeks to build a coalition of allies. Premier Li also mentioned China's willingness to assist many nations, particularly in developing economies with artificial intelligence technology. And Huawei Technologies has unveiled its new AI computing system, the Cloud Matrix 384, at that same conference in Shanghai. This is the system. It's considered a potential rival to NVIDIA's advanced product. Analysts are suggesting that Huawei's design strategies enable the Cloud Matrix to outperform NVIDIA in certain aspects. Despite facing US export restrictions, Huawei is recognized as a leading supplier of chips for AI in China. The Cloud Matrix features a unique architecture that enhances chip connectivity and is already functional on Huawei's cloud platforms. Checking the markets, this coming week, the US stock market faces potential disruption due to a deadline for new global tariffs extended by President Trump until the 1st of August. Investors will also be paying close attention to the Fed Reserve's monetary policy meeting, monthly employment figures and earnings reports from major companies like Apple and also Microsoft. The S&P 500 continues to achieve record highs, having gained 28% since its April low, while market volatility has decreased significantly. However, some signs of heightened risk appetite among retail investors have emerged, indicating possible market exuberance. Economists now expecting July's employment report to show a job increase of around 102,000, reflecting resilient economic conditions. And finally, Bitcoin has experienced significant volatility over the past week, dropping nearly 10% from its all-time high, raising concerns about a potential price crash. Despite that recent dip, which analysts attribute in part to large sell-offs by crypto firm Galaxy Digital, there are still bullish predictions for Bitcoin's future value.